Greetings, salutations, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Devon, and welcome to my tutorial, or my overview, of version 1.0.2 of my core slash controller management engine. Now, first and foremost, a little minor change that I made this version is I've added the script core globals. Now, the only real reason for this is, see, all my globals used to be declared right here, and they were all listed. Well, now it's all confined to a simple script, so it gives you a little bit more, a little bit more space here and a little less stuff that you nit and grit that you have to stare at while managing this file. So, we gotta make sure that this is ran and just left alone. So that was just a little tweak, a little refined thing that I did. Something kind of nice. And there's a couple of new values in the core game configuration as well. We'll start off with the game view object. I added a view system, and we'll go over that here in the moment. It's strictly for side scrollers. So if your game is not a side scroller, you can actually set that to -1, and it will completely ignore it. But on top of that as well, a certain object needs to be initiated into a room for it to start. So you're not being forced to use it, but it is there if you want to use it. That's something that I think is very important, that we don't, while this system grows, we don't want to force people to use a bunch of useless bells and whistles. So it's there if you want to use it. You can set it to -1 if you don't want to use it at all. But still, it's kind of cool, and we'll go over how it works. Next is game_debug mode. I don't know why I didn't have this here in the first place. This is amazing. So I've used this in other games I had developed, but I just now got it hooked into my core engine here. So you can use this to set up all sorts of little things in your game that will help you debug things. And I'll show you more on that here in a second. Game_enable shortcuts. Now, I added a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts that makes managing and developing your game a lot easier and more quick. And I'll go over what those are. And what this does is, say you release your game, you probably don't want your players to be able to randomly reset rooms, the games, quit on a dime, and then just constantly mash the full screen. So you can actually set this to false, and they won't work. But while you're developing, you can just leave it to true. Works great. Then next is game_window scale, which actually has to do with the screen handling. Now under utilities here, we got the full window script, which actually game height feeds into. Well, it requires 2 arguments. Well, now you can set this here. You can set this. I got the scale set to 2 just for the sake of making sure the window fits in for the video. But you can set it to whatever you want. Otherwise, you can. Whoop, come on. Otherwise, you can set it to 0, and it will just scale automatically as large as it can without breaking the size of the screen that it's on. But for now, we'll just keep it at 2. All right, so that's our new variables. Let's go over the shortcuts real quick. So you can actually view them yourself under Step Game Commands. And as you can see, these aren't that complex. You can, in fact, make your own if you really want to. They're specific to your game. In fact, I highly encourage that you do. So if keyboard check, left control, and keyboard check press, Q, game_end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run the game. Yeah, go through the typical testing. Okay. As you can see, I changed up the room a little bit to show off the engine a little bit more. But if I hit Control Q, game ends. Pretty simple, right? And then we actually have one for debug mode. I really should jump in and show you debug mode as well. So we'll go ahead and do that. And the reason why is because the view system actually utilizes the debug mode and is actually a fine example on using the debug mode well. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. Okay. Now if I hit Control D, we get this little object appearing. What the heck is that? Well, that's your camera object. So if I start moving around, you can see the camera object move around and control the view basically. Which, by the way, this is the 2D camera system here. So like if you look left, it pans a little, not a whole lot, but a little bit to the left so that the player can see more of in the direction that they're looking. And it's not going to force them to look off screen either, which is nice. I got no walls there, so I can just wander into the abyss. But anyways, And, you can move down and it keeps you at a decent height. And then you can still move, like, to the top of the screen without, bonking your head on the top. It's not amazing, but, it's okay. It does the job. And if you want to know where your camera object is, you just put her in debug mode and you can see where it's moving around to. Kind of nice. And then if we hit Control R, it restarts the entire game. However, if you don't want to restart your entire game, and screen is doing weird things right now, I can hit Control-Shift-R, and it only resets the room, which is kind of nice. And plus, you can hit Control-F for full screen mode, but I don't want to do that. That will mess up the recording. And Game Maker is being stupid. Oh, hi, Sans. How's it going? Anyways, so next up, okay, got this, got that. Let's go over the debug system a little bit. So here's the view object. And here's how I defined it to only show when debug mode was on. No, not there. Right here. Okay. So visible is a built-in variable. You can set it to true or false. And if it's by default, it's true. And in fact, I think this is it right here. Yeah, you can toggle that right there. But you can access it in code too right here. And setting it to false will make it invisible, but it still does stuff, which is kind of nice. I just have visible set to the debug mode. If debug mode is false, it's not showing. If debug mode is true, it does show. And you can do that with pretty much any object you can think of that, does things actively on the screen, but you don't actually see. Now, another thing that this is very useful for, and I'll actually hop into our master controller object here, is I'm just gonna, and you can do this for any object, you can do this for the master control, although I'd actually recommend using your own object so it doesn't get overwritten. But I'm gonna set up a draw event. Actually, let's change that to draw GUI. Just to make things a little bit easier. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up some good conditions to draw text onto the screen if we're in debug mode. Let's see, draw text, and I don't know, it doesn't really matter, 50 by 50. We are in debug mode. Be sure to end that line. Now let's go ahead and run it. Beat to beat to beat to beat to beat to beat to beat. Da 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 da. Okay. Now if I hit Control D, there we go. We got a message up there that says we are in debug mode. Now, here's the fun thing. You could actually make a list of variables that you want to track and just program them in to show when you throw yourself into debug mode. Now, are you starting to see how powerful this can be? I've used the system very well. It served me quite well, and I'm very happy I have actually got it implemented into my core system here because, now really anybody can use it and have fun with it. But anyway, so yeah, we got that going now, which is really, really nice. And in a future version, I might do a little bit more with it. But, for now, that's what you got, and it can do some wonderful things for you. So that's debug mode for you. And then, well, the view system. Let's go over the view system object. That's always fun. So the view system object. First off, it's created, and we do the traditional things. We declare some variables, but the first thing that we do, we check to make sure that the view object does not equal -1. And if it does, the instance destroys itself. Because if there's no view object, there's no point in it being around. And plus, the view, it really relies on that variable. And if that variable equals -1, yeah, there's going to be a bunch of bad things going on. So what we got going on then is cam object is equal to game underscore view object. And all the object operates around that object. So, but you can change cam object to really whatever you want. Say you want to be able to shift views and control two different objects. You can just point to the cam object, and another thing, cam underscore, or actually no, it'd be shoot. Where is it? Okay, yep. obj underscore view dot cam underscore object is equal to my new object. You can call that in any object, any script, whatever, and it will point and jump to whatever object that you specify, which is kind of nice. So next we'll go into step. Okay, we have some values that we need to define on step. Facing. So the way the system looks back and forth is it checks, whether this value is equal to -1 or 1. Now, in this case, image underscore x scale works very well. But say you got a system where, instead of using the image x scale, you just simply swap out sprites. You may have to set up some logic here to change object underscore facing accordingly, so that if they're looking left, object facing is equal to -1, or if they're looking right, object underscore facing is equal to +1. And you can, and you just check, the game view object. Actually, holy crap, that's incorrect. I'll make sure this is correct in the final version, but this should be cam object. There we go, so that you can swap it out. But it will follow the cam object, or you can check whatever variables are in the player object that you specify through here. So that should be very useful towards you, and refine it further if you have to. Otherwise, in most cases, image underscore x scale should work. Camera logic. This is where the debug is set. Visible, I went over that. I have a state machine here, which, by the way, if you have not played around with state machines, I highly recommend that you do. They are fantastic. But anyways, default, also case 0. Basically, camera follows the player. In a future release, I'm going to build some scripts that will allow you to break the camera off from the player and actually move the camera around a little bit more. That will be coming, like I said, at a later time. Not right now, but at a later time. I'm still figuring out the specifics of that. But you will be able to position the camera based on scripts, which will actually be very useful for like cutscenes. And I actually have in my scrap box somewhere a system for cutscenes that I had developed, but haven't done a lot with. So I'm definitely going to work on incorporating that at some point. Let's see, and then in the end step, we got the camera positioning system, which is a lot of fun logic. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but this way seems to be working okay for me for now. So if the distance between destination X, the destination where it's supposed to be versus where it is currently at, is greater than 1, then we set the cam speed to be, its distance divided by 6. Basically, it's going to take 6 steps for it to get from one point to the other. Otherwise, we just make it, the distance. And the reason why we do that is just so that, if it's closer than 1, which, believe me, it does happen, then just move it straight to its position where it's supposed to be. And then position the camera if needed. If X does not equal its destination, and then also if the distance between them is greater than cam speed, then we just start moving it. However, otherwise X just plus equal the distance. And then same thing with vertical. And that's pretty much it for the camera object. And it looks like that's pretty much everything in my version history here. All right, so that pretty much does it. Hopefully this video was informative to you. I will put a link in the description on where you can get this on my website. Should be the same page as before, only it's version 1.0.2. I'm also including my workflow, which, by the way, if you have not played around with workflow, oh my God, it's amazing. I love it. Wonderful little note-taking application. And what's cool is I can embed it on my website, which is amazing. But anyways, so that pretty much does it. Hopefully this was useful to you, and you can, maybe grab it and do some more cool stuff with it. And, if you do some neat stuff, please, by all means, share it to me. I'd love to see it. That pretty much does it, you guys. Thanks a lot for checking me out, and, happy gaming.